Okay, hi folks. Thanks for coming along to the presentation. I'm going to start by telling you a story about a company that's really going to set the scene for this presentation on the hallmarks of successful training organizations. Their timeline looks a little something like this. So picture the scene. They start up in the mid-80s. They're doing a pretty good job, and within about 10 years, they become effectively the undisputed market leader in their field. So you wonder how a company like this could all of a sudden tumble. And it's because in 2000 they missed a trick. Okay, so their revenues started to drop a few years after that, and then they filed for bankruptcy. So they were huge. They went from 8.4 billion down to 24 million in the space of, 15, 16 years or so there. And if you look forward, just gave that away. The company was Blockbuster. Okay, so they went through a pretty successful time over a 20-year period, and then in 2000 they actually missed a trick. Okay, so they missed a trick in 2000. Anybody know what that might have been? Does anybody know this story already? Yeah? So what they didn't do in 2000 was they didn't invest in Netflix. Now, Netflix actually went to Blockbuster around about that time. They were quite small. They had maybe 300,000 subscribers. And they went to Blockbuster looking for investment. And at the time, they were simply asking for 5% of what Blockbuster's annual revenues were. So 50 million is what they were looking for. And in return, they were going to give them half of the company, effectively. And Blockbuster decided, no, we don't need to do that. You're very small. We're very, very big. We're having lots of success. No thanks. We'll carry on. But that turned out to be a pretty big mistake, pretty costly mistake, because 10 years later, Netflix was worth an incredible amount more. And Blockbuster at its peak was worth about $5 billion, and Netflix in 2010 was worth $2 billion plus. So those of you who prefer a more graphical approach, you can see here how the tumble started pretty rapidly as Netflix started to soar. Now, if you're not aware of their current value, Netflix is worth over $35 billion nowadays. And I gave a similar talk in January at the Learning Technologies show. And at the time, their share price was around about 400. And even in the past 5 months, that's gone up by 50%. I'm not promoting Netflix investment, but it's just interesting to see the difference in change in markets and how fast things can grow and how things can change. So very quickly, a minnow can become the shark, right? So what I'm going to try and say here and get across to you all is that I don't want you to make that kind of mistake. So let's look at why Blockbuster made those mistakes first, and then I'll start to talk about how this relates to training organizations. So what Blockbuster didn't do is they didn't innovate. At that time, say, late 90s, turn of the century, people in the US typically had 56K dial-up modems. So Blockbuster didn't really see the future in broadband and the speed of the internet. So they thought, they're onto a good thing. We don't need to change too much. Ironically, they did start to introduce this kind of service after Netflix was established. By then, it was too late. They also communicated poorly with their customers. Now, Blockbuster's revenues, I've told you already, at their peak were about $5 billion. About 15 to 20% of that revenue actually came from late fees. So we all remember the days of video rental and DVD rental and how you'd always pay these ridiculous fines. The story goes that the founder of Netflix actually started after receiving a ridiculously high charge for returning a DVD to Blockbuster, thinking that's the wrong way to do it. So Blockbuster weren't really giving the right message out to their customers, and that was also going to play a key part in their downfall. And ultimately, they just became blinded by their comfort zone. They were doing very well, they were very big, and they thought that they were invincible. But they weren't, and nobody ever is nowadays, especially with how fast things move forward. So I'm going to talk to you about the hallmarks of successful training organizations. And I've been in the training industry for about 5 years, so not a huge amount of time. But over that 5-year period, I have consulted with over 1,000 training companies or training departments, so dealing with training providers day in, day out for a number of years. And I've learned quite a few key things over that time, and I'd like to share that with you today, and hopefully you can take away some valuable insights. These slides will be made available afterwards, so by all means wait, but if you want to take photographs as we go through, by all means feel free. There's some good resources that will pop up during the presentation as well. So, the hallmarks of a successful training organization then. Make sure that you innovate, make sure that you communicate, and make sure that you challenge yourself. Okay, so do these things and do them as regularly as you can. No amount of time is too often. Doing new things is essential. Communicating with your market, whether your market is your prospects out in industry or whether it's your own staff within your company for a training department, make sure you communicate correctly to these people. Also challenge yourself. Don't be afraid of asking yourself some challenging questions, and be sure that you innovate fully as well. Now, I'm going to talk about all three of these through the presentation, and I'm going to give you 2 or 3 examples of each one as we work our way through. So, starting with innovation. E-learning is the number one, which, let's face it, we're all involved with or know about e-learning, and more people are doing it nowadays. But it still surprises me when I say to somebody, do you deliver e-learning? And they say, oh, no, it doesn't really work for our industry. Or, yeah, it's something I want to get around to, but I've not quite managed to do it yet. The e-learning actually started about 15 years ago, I think, roughly, as a way of technical people to share knowledge and information when they're working on projects. And now it's something that's used by pretty much all of us, which is evident by the size of the market. In the last 4 years alone, it's become a market worth over $105 billion. So if you're not involved, you should really ask yourselves, why are you not involved, or how can I get involved quicker? So e-learning can apply to everybody. You've just sometimes got to be a bit more creative with how you do it. The benefits of e-learning are pretty obvious. You'll know a lot of these already, and these will be the reasons why you do it or why you want to get into it. The costs are much lower, right? You can deliver training without the high costs of paying trainers and hiring venues and all the rest of it that goes along there. Better knowledge retention as well. It's proven that e-learning, when delivered as a sort of preparation pre-course and post-course reinforcement, is going to be proven to give people better results. And an interesting report published by IBM, I think in about 2014, was that they stated for every $1 spent on e-learning, they received about $30 worth of productivity at the back end. So think about things like that. Look for reports like that, and you'll see that e-learning is really going to work well. Of course, it makes it much more accessible to people as well. You can train a lot more. So if you're a large organization, then you can train people across the globe. If you're a training company and you want to actually sell your courses, then you don't just have to focus on people flying to your country or training people in your state or your county or whatever. You can make sure you can train people all over with relative ease. So a lot of people say, yes, e-learning sounds great. I'm sold. I definitely want to do it. But they don't know how to get started. So if you want a bit of advice on how to get started, then check out scorm.com to understand standards within LMSs and how authoring tools communicate with your learning management system. Make sure that you also just run a search for e-learning authoring tools. You're going to get loads of great results there, and page 1 of Google will give you some of the top e-learning programs that I would recommend, authoring tools that I'd recommend anyway. And then find the right learning management system as well. There are tons of LMSs out there. We provide one. Loads of people in this room provide LMSs. You don't need to go far to find providers. But just make sure that you try them out as well. If you don't get a free trial from the LMS that you're looking at, move on to the next one. You should be able to try software before you start buying it these days. It really is just a natural expectation. And then engage with the consultants who know the product so they can guide you through it. Typically, what I find a lot of companies do nowadays is they don't sell to you, they just help you buy. Because you're going to buy from somebody anyway, and if you do a better job of helping them buy, then ultimately you're going to find out whether your product fits the best or not. So, they're my tips on how to get started with e-learning if you're not there already. Some other tips when creating content that I'd like to share with you are you should do your research. So make sure you get good content, relative content. Make sure that it's appealing to the right people, yeah? So you're targeting the right audience. Make sure it's in bite-sized chunks as well. Don't go trying to stuff loads into one, perhaps, segment of your e-learning course or one part of the presentation. So deliver it in bite-sized chunks and engage your learners as well. So make sure it's interactive. Okay, you want your people to be either taking quizzes or clicking somewhere or doing something to prove that they're still engaged. And by delivering bite-sized chunks, you're going to do that. You're not going to get them bored. They're not going to sit there for 30 minutes and then shut off and answer a few questions at the end. Offer results as well, because that's a great way of people seeing how well they're doing. We're all motivated when we see that we're doing pretty well. It spurs us on to do a bit better and go a bit further. So offer the results if you can. And use the right people to create the content as well. if you've got people in your organization who are good at design, who are good at this sort of thing and have done it before, make sure that they're the ones involved in creating the content as well, okay? Don't take somebody who isn't familiar with modern technology to create your e-learning content, because you just create more work for yourselves. Additionally, don't just convert your PowerPoint files into a SCORM file and throw it into an LMS. Now, I say don't do it. A lot of people do that, and they do it as a stopgap. And as a stopgap, that's kind of okay, because you can at least move into the e-learning world, and you can do it fairly quickly. But as a long-term solution, make sure that you're using the authoring tools how they're supposed to be used. And a lot of great authoring tools out there invest a lot of time in making sure that you can create interactive quizzes or interactive videos or engaging animations. So make sure you use them to the full extent. Don't just convert a PowerPoint and think you're done. And don't use too much text. I'm aware of the irony of putting that up on a slide that's pretty much full of text there, but don't use too much text in your e-learning delivery. Make sure you've got animations and visuals there as well, because it's how a lot of us learn well. And don't be inconsistent. Make sure that the people who are building the content are all on the same team. Make sure that these people know what the corporate brand guidelines are, what the structure is, and whether a logo should be squeezed or whether it can be condensed or whether it's the right color. So just make sure you got consistency there, because that's also proven to significantly aid knowledge retention. So some tips there on creating content. Sticking with innovation then, I've got a couple of more things on innovation I'd like to speak about. This one is accreditations and associations. So if you wouldn't mind, a quick show of hands, those of you who in your organizations are affiliated with or members of accrediting bodies or associations. Yeah, okay, 20% of the audience about, okay. So if you're not already, then check it out. Make sure that for your own staff internally, there's something that's relevant, whether it's health and safety or first aid and some of the basic essentials like that. Or if you're selling courses, make sure that you know one of your accrediting bodies as well. Our customers collectively represent over 100 accrediting bodies and associations. So if you're not sure if there's one out there for you, I pretty much answered that question. There will be something. So check it out and find out which one and get involved there. Because there's a lot of benefits to being involved with accreditations and associations, not least that you get access to more content. You can network with people, like-minded people within your industry, within your market. You get wider market exposure, and you also get that seal of approval. So for your own staff internally, they're going to want to get something they can take on maybe to their next job or their next employer or to further themselves in their career. So if you've got a seal of approval, people can actually take that away, and it's much more beneficial to them. Equally, if you're selling training courses, if you're a training company, then you want to make sure that you've got that seal of approval, because then people are going to pay for your courses. It kind of makes sense, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves of the basics in order to move forward. And then passion. Okay, so you all do what you do because you're passionate about it. And I'm speaking here today because I'm pretty passionate about what I do and the industry I work in and the people I speak to. So just remember that you've got that passion, and that alone will drive you forward, because it will force you to innovate. And if it doesn't, then maybe you need to switch what you're doing, because passion lies elsewhere, and you need to find that driver again. But remember why you got into what you're doing, and that passion will really come across when you speak or educate people, or when you create that content anyway. Okay, so they're the innovation points. Also, I want to speak about communication. So the second hallmark of successful training organizations is communication. I gave you the Blockbuster example earlier on. They clearly weren't communicating well, because I don't think any company really should be relying on, say, 15, 20% of their revenue coming from penalties. Nobody likes paying penalties, so you shouldn't be relying on that, because you're not going to have good rapport with your customers. It doesn't really make much sense in my eyes. So communication is a key thing. And communication starts with having a good online presence. Not just a website that you put up there and 5 years later you may take a look at it and say, yeah, it's all pretty good, I'll change a bit of copy here, and yeah, we're sound, we'll carry on going. No, a website nowadays is something that is your voice, it's your identity, and the people who go to your website, whether it's your own staff or whether it's your prospects or your customers, they should be taken on a journey through your website. They should be able to access everything. It really should be your online brochure, your voice, and you should have loads of resources out there as well. So make sure you review it every year, not necessarily change it every year, but review it every year, and maybe make changes every 2 or 3 years, depending on how your industry works. But don't let it just sit there idle, because it'll soon become quite dull. The resources here for website management and website improvement are pretty worthwhile taking a look at if you don't know them already. Crazy Egg gives you good analytics. Google, of course, gives you great analytics. And moz.com helps you with your search engine optimization. So some good resources there that we've found in our company have really helped us. And we're a really online-focused business. Our web presence means an awful lot to us. So these are the kind of things that we found help us. And of course, there are loads more out there that you can search for as well. So with your website itself, if you have got the budget, then go out there and get a really high-profile agency to do some great work for you. If you haven't got the budget, then perhaps build your own and look at some content management systems that are out there. If you're maybe at a bit of a halfway house, get the web agency to build it for you, but make sure it's on a content management system like this so that you can then update your copy yourselves and you're not relying on somebody else. There's nothing worse than having to go to somebody's website and you see that their blog is months out of date. We've all done it. When you're there, you think, oh, why am I really here? Why am I looking at this organization? Because they probably haven't got their finger on the pulse. Whereas one that's blogging regularly is not only going to have great search engine results, but is also going to be able to offer you a lot of great content relevant to your industry. So content management systems are important, but make sure your content management system, and this is quite a key point, make sure it integrates with your course management system. Okay, so if you're updating a course, make sure that that's immediately reflected on your website and on your own website, not some kind of third-party tool. Make sure that your courses are fed through to your website and that when you receive bookings from your website, they go straight into your course management system. You don't want to have to duplicate this data entry and so on, and you don't want your website to be out of date with your course information either. So ideally, I should be able to go to your site, book onto a course as a customer or internally register for a course if I'm a new start in the business, and then I receive all the automatic reminders and confirmations and reading materials automatically without you having to do a thing. So that's the kind of thing that you're aiming for if you're not there already. Another point on communication is having a robust marketing plan. And it doesn't matter what stage you're at. We went from a following of about 2,000 people up to 20,000 within the space of about 18 to 24 months. We could have easily thought at 2,000, oh, that's not really very many. Let's wait and get more information and then, or more people, more names, and then let's start to put a marketing tool out there. But no, we decided to start sending out training tips emails once a week to our audience, and we promoted at trade shows and did all the right things, and then eventually that grew. Now, I know 20,000 isn't millions, but we focus on quite a niche industry, so it may never be millions. But my point is, start your plan now, because you never know where you'll be in a year's time, right? But the Netflix example with their stocks, if I'd bought shares in them in January, right now I'd have 50% return pretty quickly. So, start right now. You never know what might happen in a short period of time. So have a robust marketing plan, but make sure that you set yourself targets that are smart, which, okay, this isn't a new thing, right? We're not looking at something that's hugely innovative here, but I mentioned earlier on that sometimes we've got to remind ourselves of the basics. And especially with marketing, you've got to remind yourself of the basics, because often I speak to people who say, oh yeah, I have this plan, and I'm going to do all these great things, and I'm going to do it all within about a month or 6 months. I'm just going to grow really, really fast. And then you kind of think to yourself, okay, well, is that really achievable? How have you measured that? Oh, no, yeah, we want to do it, so it's going to happen. They haven't really set themselves a smart target plan there. So do that, and then set yourself something realistic, perhaps something like just one thing every X period of time. So maybe you want to send out something like one blog per week. Maybe that's realistic. If it's not, do it once every 2 weeks. But do what you can actually do to maintain consistency. Send out an email per fortnight, and that can include your 2 blog articles. It's not hard to do. Just do that, make it relevant to your industry, and off you go. Create a link back as well. Generate a network. Communicate with people in your industry. Link back from their site to yours, yours to theirs. Bit of sharing in that way is always going to help you, and Google likes that sort of stuff as well. So search engine optimization is quite crucial. Give out a value offering too. We give out ebooks. We create ebooks fairly regularly. And you'll see there's some notes on ebooks shortly in this presentation where you can download ours. But give a value offering. If you can, once per month. If you can't, once per quarter, once per year. Just get it out there. And my point is, if you start, it will all come together, okay? And create success stories as well, because the best kind of referrals are the people who are either doing the training within the company already and recommend it to other people, or those who have bought your courses and then say to somebody else, hey, these guys were great, this trainer was excellent, the material was fantastic, go to them. They're going to do your sales job for you pretty well. And sell your value. Don't be afraid of selling your value. Don't be afraid of selling. It's really important that you do this. What I've found when speaking to younger companies is that a lot of founders, they get quite comfortable in what they're doing, and perhaps they don't tend to increase their prices, or they don't tend to change too much because it's working well, and they started doing it because they're passionate about what they do, and it's still doing the right thing because people are happy and they're turning over a decent amount, and it's all good. One of our customers, in fact, hired a commercial director a short while ago, and that commercial director looked at what they were doing, looked at what the competition was doing, and said, we need to increase our prices, and some of these I'm going to double the price. And they did that, and the founder was kind of CEO, founder, he was kind of like, okay, well, I brought you on for a reason, I'll let you do it. And their revenues just started to soar. And that all happened within a space of probably 3 to 6 months. These guys did have a health and safety training. So they have quite a large portfolio of courses. They changed their pricing structure. It worked really, really well. And they're doing even better now. And they're really having a tremendous amount of success. It's quite a good story. So also bear in mind your reputation and improvement. Okay, so I've already talked about getting referrals and so on. So just make sure that you're keeping on top of your reputation and that you're building your reputation and that you're always improving as well. So when it comes to feedback, feedback is quite a crucial thing, yeah? If you're not getting the feedback, then you're probably going to be missing something out. So your resources for gathering feedback, if you're not doing things like this already, or if you're maybe putting out paper-based feedback forms, yeah, it's okay, you're getting something. But check out some of these resources here. Customer thermometers, one we actually use in our company. Now, I like that one quite a lot because you can just send out a quick thermometer check. They tap on their screen, good, bad, or not, and then the feedback comes straight in. So it's a nice quick feedback tool, and some of the others I'm sure you'll recognize anyway. So just make sure you're getting your feedback, track it, and learn from it, okay? Because what people say, it matters, especially nowadays with social media. You could be made or broken by a lot of the people who go on your courses. The free ebooks I mentioned then, so check these out. All you need to know is that URL at the bottom, okay? So getadministrate.com/resources. Remember it or come over and see us later on. A bit more of the presentation to go, but just a quick note, we're on stand 4 just over there, so come over and have a chat and get a leaflet. But we put out some pretty good ebooks which have been really well received. So check those out, and I think you'll probably find that there's something you can take away from those. Okay, and the final hallmark then, let's make sure that you're challenging yourself. Let's make sure that you don't become complacent, and let's make sure that you're pushing yourself and your company and your employees and your colleagues to always do the best you can do, okay? So challenging yourself. Make sure that you are regularly reviewing your business. Don't just sit there and think that everything is going well. We spoke about Blockbuster earlier on, and that's exactly what they did. They may have regularly reviewed their business, but if they did, they probably didn't do it that well. They probably saw the numbers and thought, yeah, it's great, revenue's coming in. They weren't thinking about necessarily where it was all coming from, and they certainly weren't thinking about innovation or what the competition were up to, because they soon got slam dunked there by Netflix. So regularly review your business and ask yourself questions. Ask yourself difficult questions. Make sure that you look at the last period, whether it was a month or a quarter or a year, and what was the performance like? Be really honest with yourself, because only if you're honest with yourself can you really then identify the areas that you can improve on. And if you're one who tends to see the glass half full most of the time, that's great, but get somebody in for a real objective opinion on how things are going, okay? So get everybody's opinions at all levels of the company and see how well things are really going. Ask yourself some questions like this, just to get you started. How successful is 2015 to date, and what does that really actually mean? If you're a training company, then are you selling enough places on your courses? Do you have enough people booking onto your courses? Are you promoting courses in the right way? If you need to analyze your learning trends, make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're teaching people in the right way. And make sure you know who or what your real competition is. Is it another organization if you're selling courses? Or is it that you're not training people within the company, if you're a training department, very well, and they're not then speaking favorably about the training the company offers, so they're not then getting engaged to go and register themselves onto their induction training or whatever else might be. So just have a think about these things and make sure that you read all about it. And by read all about it, I mean if you're not looking at blogs such as, say, trainingindustry.com or Training Zone here in the UK. So we've got lots of great resources out there that you can be looking at to make sure that you're always keeping on touch with what works in training, and just make sure you subscribe to some of these. Select a few. Better to always get more in your inbox and just get rid of the bits that don't matter than not know at all what's happening, okay? So be a big fan of reading. And then make time, okay? So talking about software, your software should really do a good job for you. So make sure that you review the systems you have in place and make sure that you make time for yourself. So if you make time, then you can review your software and you'll also free up more time for yourself as well. So manage everything in one place. Make sure you've got either all of your systems integrated or you have a solution that gives you everything in one place anyway. Equally, focus on your passion, because that's why you do what you do, and that's why you're good at doing what you do, is because you focus on your passion. So things like receiving online bookings or processing bookings, registrations, or sending out joining instructions, let computers do that. You know, we do live in a world now where automation is key. So free up a lot of your time, automate things that need to be automated or that can be automated, and then you'll get a load more time back. We've heard of people freeing up 1 to 2 days per week once they've automated a lot of their admin tasks and so on. So make sure you bear that in mind. Increasing course bookings means two things. If you're a training company, you will increase your revenues. It's pretty straightforward. And the IBM example that I mentioned earlier on is if you're a training department, you're going to get a serious return on the investment you make in training. So just a reminder of what IBM said was that for every $1 they spent, they got $30 back in productivity. So bear in mind those statistics. And also, I spoke a lot about e-learning. Make sure you deliver exceptional e-learning. Don't just convert your PowerPoints and do something else. Make sure you've got a good LMS that connects with everything else in your business, so your management system, your learning management system, your online booking. You know, bring it all together in one place. And then make sure you enhance your talent pool. I'm not going to talk too much about this particular part at the final part of the presentation here, because you're all involved in training, so you should all know the value of enhancing your talent pool anyway. You know what it's like to network with people and develop people internally, so just make sure that you don't lose sight of doing those things. So I've talked about quite a few things here today, right? And here's the summary. The 3 hallmarks of successful training organization are that you've got to make sure that you innovate. You've got to make sure that you communicate properly and to the right audiences. And you've got to make sure that you challenge yourselves, okay? Do all 3 of those things, and then you won't become the next Blockbuster. And there's also something to bear in mind here is that I've talked to you about quite a lot, and people say, you know, it's almost too much information to take on, so thankfully quite a few photographs have been taken so you can go away and digest this. But, you know, it's like somebody says, how do you eat an elephant? And you just simply say, well, just one bite at a time. So do each piece when it's relevant to your business, and you'll slowly but surely look back in a year's time and say, wow, you know, I've really come quite a long way. And so the key final point that I want to leave with you with is this thought here by Andrew Grove. So keep that in mind. Don't become complacent. Don't think that you've done it all, because there is a lot more to come. If you're not going to innovate, somebody else is. And the way industry moves forward so quickly now, if you're not innovating, you probably will be out of business in a few years' time anyway. So make sure that you think about that and bring yourself forward, okay, folks? And if any of you want my contact details to call or email or discuss this in any more detail, then by all means, you know, give me a shout. Happy to discuss that in more detail, share these slides. And like I say, we're on stand 4 just over there. So if you want to come by and chat a bit more about any of these stories I've told, then do so, and it'd be great to see you all there. But for now, thanks for coming along. Thank you.